So today we're going to take a look at NYCFC Road to 2021 MLS Cup. After yesterday I made a video of the other finalists of the 2021 MLS Cup, the Portland Timbers, and take a look at their road to make it to the 2021 MLS Cup. And yesterday I did say that NYCFC, their road to the big game, was very similar to how the Timbers made it to MLS Cup this season. That technically isn't true when you look at the fact that NYCFC for majority of the year was above the red line, unlike the Portland Timbers for majority of the year, or at least for the first half of the season. They were below the red line, and they eventually did kind of went on a good run to get themselves above the red line and get themselves in playoff position. Though I will say that both of these teams did had to face some adversity, and for NYCFC, they definitely faced some big adversity down the stretch, especially heading into October. They had a stretch where they just could not score, or even if they wanted to, and the fact that they also find themselves below the red line with like 5 games to go, it looked like this was going to be a case where NYCFC might belong in the club of the most disappointing team this season. And there was even a lot of people and a lot of NYCFC fans demanding Ronnie Delia to be fired from the team. In fact, I think there was one game where they even some of their fans even bought out the Ronnie Delia banner because of how bad NYCFC was basically letting their playoff spots slip out of their grip. But fortunately, they kind of recovered in the last couple of games to make it into the playoffs. But even then, I still didn't think that this was going to be the team to finally break the curse, because we've seen this before, where even if they head into the playoffs hot, they will always find a way to lose in the playoffs. And not only the fact that they decided to prove me wrong, but they have actually gone even one step further than I thought they would to break the curse, which is not make it past the second round of the playoffs, and that of course is reaching MLS Cup. Now, that being said, I know there's still some naysayers saying the fact that, well, NYCFC, their road to MLS Cup was kind of a little bit of a gimmick because of the way that they get to play against Atlanta United at their their home and at a baseball stadium, and they get to play against a Revs team that haven't played in 24 days, and they get to play against a Union side that was decimated because of COVID outbreak. Now, for me, my counter argument to that is that, well, yes, unfortunately they had to face their opponent that wasn't really at their best strength, but at the same time, they can't control that. Like, they can't control the fact that they get to play at Yankee Stadium in their first game against Atlanta United. They can't control the fact that, well, they get to play against a Revs team that haven't played in 24 days. And most importantly, they can't control the fact that the Philadelphia Union had a COVID outbreak, even though, of course, it was very unfortunate to see that happen. In the end, they just got the job done. And when you look at their playoff run this season, I don't think there should be a lot of argument the fact that they don't deserve it, with the way that they were kind of the better team. Well, actually, except for that Eastern Conference final where they kind of wasn't really the better team, and kind of was able to be patient and eventually get the job done to move on to MLS Cup. But the previous 2 games, they were definitely the better team and would rightfully so deserve to reach MLS Cup. Now, going all the way back in the beginning of the season, now just like the Portland Timbers, they also got off to a slow start in their first game as they lost on the road in their first game to DC United 2-1, and that was a game where they were actually off to a good start with a 1-0 lead, but then they gave up 2 goals, I think, in the second half to lose 2-1 in that game. But they did bounce back in the very next game, and in a big way, where they get to play against the Santa Claus of MLS, that is FC Cincinnati, gifting 3 points to everybody this season, and they not only took advantage of that, but they put a 5 spot on FC Cincinnati. 5-0 win that they had against the Wooden Spoon winner this season. And then in the very next game, they were able to go on the road against the Philadelphia Union and win 2-0 in that game. Now, I know at that point the Union wasn't really doing that well, and they also were kind of off to a slow start, but considering the fact that the Union haven't lost a home regular season game, I think, up to that point, although I could be wrong. I think Inter Miami was the first team to hand the Union their first regular season loss in over a year or so. But it's still kind of impressive that NYCFC was able to go on the road and win 2-0 against the Union. That a couple of months later we will find out that was actually the matchup for the Eastern Conference final. But the next game, they drew 1-1 against Orlando City. They then drew 1-1 against Toronto FC. They did lose 2-1 at home against Columbus, but this was the time when they basically was kind of temporarily kicked out of Yankee Stadium and had to play in their hated rival home ground, that is Red Bull Arena. And I've said this before. You can clearly see NYCFC was not comfortable playing at Red Bull Arena. And it's not a big surprise that they were losing a lot of games in that stadium because, one, you're playing your most hated rival stadium, which that's kind of embarrassing that is the case. And secondly, it's almost feel like it's kind of a road game with the way that, first of all, not many NYCFC fans even go to these games. And it's not just because the fact that it's tough to get to Red Bull Arena for some of these NYCFC fans, but I'm pretty sure a lot of NYCFC fans must be disgusted the fact that they have to watch their team play their home game at their most hated rival. Like it's literally like it's basically like let's say if there is a situation where the Portland Timbers can't play their home game at Providence Park, and let's say Providence Park, for the people that kind of forgot, that used to be a baseball stadium too, and let's say they never done the whole renovation, and the minor league baseball team is still there. There could be a case where the Timbers could have to play at their home game at Lumen's Field, and you know how much that will piss off Timbers fans. Yeah, that I think that's kind of the same way for NYCFC fans when they have to play their home game at their hated rival, the Red Bulls, for all their games, and that really just kind of hurt the pride of a lot of these NYCFC fans, and just kind of feel like it was a road game every time NYCFC play a home game at Red Bull Arena. But the very next one, they did go on the road against LAFC, and they got an impressive 2-1 win against LAFC. And back, I know LAFC was kind of struggling in the beginning part of the season too, but they were down to 10 men in that game against LAFC. And the fact that they were able to get a victory despite the fact that they're down to 10 men, and when they were down to 10 men, they were not even leading that game. Like they literally score a late goal as they were down to 10 men, so that's even more of an improbable victory. Yeah, that is definitely got to be one of the highlight win of the season if you're an NYCFC fan. Though the very next game, they did lose to the eventual Supporters Shield winner team, the New England Revolution, 3-2. And then, of course, they did bounce back by winning 1-0 against Atlanta United. They did win 2-1 against DC United, and this game was also at Red Bull Arena, and it was kind of the first win that they had at Red Bull Arena after 3 previous try playing at home at their hated rival stadium. Then they, of course, got a 1-0 win against Atlanta United. I believe this was at Yankee Stadium, and they finally get a chance to kind of play at their true home, though, depending on if you talk to different NYCFC fans, they're hoping that eventually the day of them moving out of the baseball stadium and get themselves their permanent home is when we'll call NYCFC truly have a home. But in the very next game, they did lose 2-1 on the road against Columbus. They then didn't win 1-0 against Montreal, and then they put a 5 spot on Orlando City at home, and I know that game was at Yankee Stadium as they won 5-0 there. And then they, of course, won 4-1 against Columbus, so they kind of started to go on a relatively good run in July, though they did drew 0-0 against Chicago on the road before winning 2-0 against Inter Miami. Then they lost 1-0 to the Philadelphia Union before bouncing back and winning 2-0 against New England, though they did go on the road and lose 3-1 to Nashville, so they're starting to kind of become a little bit inconsistent there, and then that inconsistency started to turn into a bit of a losing streak after they lost 2-1 to New England to extend their losing streak to 3 games, and then against FC Dallas at home they drew 3-3 in this game, though in a stretch where they were like on a 4-game winless run, they really need kind of a way to snap out a streak, and which team that they can get to play that can maybe finally snap out of that bad winless run that they had in September. All right, it's the Santa Claus of MLS, known as FC Cincinnati, and even though they were playing them on the road, FC Cincinnati this season, no matter home or away, they just cannot buy a win. And in this game, they were able to win 2-1 against FC Cincinnati in a game where it wasn't a decisive win, but I mean, with the way that NYCFC was struggling coming into this game, they'll take any 3 points that they can get. But after that, in the next game, just as you think maybe things can turn around, well, this is when the bad run continue. And in fact, I will say that, I talked about how they kind of started that bad run in September, where this was doing a stretch when they play against the Red Bulls. And little did we know that the only goals that they scored would be the only goals that they would be scoring for the next 4 games, and they went on a goal drought. But I argue that their bad run really kind of started in this game between the Philadelphia Union, where they gone on a stretch where I think they only won one game out of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 12. One win in the last 12 game, and this is when they find themselves below the red line for the first time since early in the season. But going back to that New York Derby, they of course drew 1-1 in that game, in a game that they probably should have won, because they were up 1-0 for pretty much majority of the game, and then they gave up a late penalty to drew 1-1 in that one. And then in the other New York Derby, because there was 2 different New York Derby in the same week, which was kind of odd how the schedule maker decided to do that. Although I think the reason why they decided to do that, because there was a New York Derby earlier this season that was postponed because of rain, and that's why they decided to kind of schedule 2 New York Derby in the same week. But in the other one, where they get to play at home, it was no luck for them, as they lost 1-0 to the New York Red Bulls. Then the next game, they go on the road against Chicago, a team that tends to struggle this season. They lost 2-0 to them on the road. In fact, I don't think NYCFC actually have beat the Chicago Fire this season. Or actually, no, that is actually incorrect, because I saw that how they did beat them in October 27. But it was just getting to a stretch where they just kind of had problems with a team that isn't considered, they're a playoff team, and just kind of counting down the days before they get eliminated. And then in the very next game, they drew 0-0 against Nashville SC at home before losing 1-0 again against the New York Red Bulls. So speaking of a team that they did not were able to get a win, they weren't able to even get one win in the New York Derby this season. And that was also a second consecutive game they lost to the Red Bulls 1-0 in the New York Derby. But they finally ended that stretch where, up to that point, they'd gone over 400 minutes without scoring a goal. That finally ended in the game against Atlanta, and it ended really late. They had to rely on a I think it was it Forensen or Amundsen that scores this free kick. It's one of those players that of course scores the free kick to finally end the drought that NYCFC had in terms of the goal scoring, and able to salvage them a point in that game in Atlanta. But you just kind of sense that, I've said back in the preview or in the review of that game that, that goal not only means a lot to NYCFC, but, when you go for a long goal drought and you finally can score a goal, all of a sudden it seems like it finally relieved the pressure, and you can maybe start to go on a run and start to finally rediscover the goal scoring that this NYCFC attack are capable to do. And my did they in the very next game, as they put up a 6 spot against DC United and score the most goal they have ever had in franchise history by winning 6-0 against DC United. They then did win 1-0 against the Chicago Fire before winning 3-1 on the road against Inter Miami, and then drew 1-1 against the Philadelphia Union. So, they were definitely recover from that bad run that they had in that started in August and gone all the way into October. But still, even though they were kind of in a good run heading to the playoffs, I think a lot of NYCFC fans were thinking that, let's see how they're going to try to disappoint me this season in the playoffs. So as we go into the playoffs, where they play against Atlanta United, and I picked Atlanta to win this one because I thought Atlanta was another team that was heading into the playoffs relatively well, and in some way they were very underrated coming into the playoffs, where I'm kind of surprised the MLS media didn't really give a lot of credit to a team that was always considered the darlings of MLS. But NYCFC basically shut all that talks about how they were how Atlanta was being underrated heading into the playoffs, because they basically win 2-0 in that game against Atlanta United. Though in the next game against New England, this was also a game where, again, even though the Revs were playing their first game in 24 days, a lot of people would give NYCFC a chance. And in this one, not only the fact that NYCFC were the better team, but in some way they should have won this in regular time, and that in extra time they actually took the lead and finally got that deserved lead. But then when New England was able to find the equalizer in the 118th minute, that's when I think a lot of people, including NYCFC fans themselves, thinking, "Yep, here we go again. This is where the team is gonna finally decide to collapse and lose in a very painful way." And in fact, we actually did go to a PK shootout, and knowing the fact that NYCFC has been really bad in PK shootout, and everybody will always remember what happened last year in that PK shootout against Orlando City, of how that was probably one of the most embarrassing PK shootout loss that NYCFC has had considered. They were literally facing against an outfield player in a PK shootout late in the game. But that also being said, I'm not going to discount off the heroic that Rodrigo Strego did in that game against Orlando City. But if you're in an NYCFC perspective, that was just kind of an embarrassment. But in this game, to everybody's surprise, they actually won the penalty kick shootout, and they won 5-3 in that PK shootout against New England to move on into the Eastern Conference Final for the first time in their franchise history. And in a game where they play another team that were playing in their first ever Eastern Conference Final, that is the Philadelphia Union. And even in a game where, again, they were this was really the game where they were kind of favorites, considering the Union was just basically playing their academy in this game, and that there was so many players that was missing in that one. They at times looked like second best for majority of this one, but like I said, they kind of hang in there. They were being very patient in terms of trying to tire out this Union team, and eventually when they were able to do so, they took advantage of it and able to score those 2 goals to come from behind and win this game to reach the MLS Cup. And again, like I said, I know there's going to be some naysayers about how NYCFC make it to MLS Cup, and that I know there's also a lot of people saying that NYCFC had basically no chance against the Portland Timbers, especially how well the Timbers have played. This is, after all, the MLS Cup, and I'll of course mention that again when I do the preview, how in an MLS Cup, this is completely different than any other game. You cannot take histories or maybe even in players or teams that may be decimated coming into the game, or maybe are kind of heavy underdogs coming into the game as a way to kind of explain, well, they probably have no shot in terms of winning MLS Cup, because in a cup final anything can happen, and we saw last year in that 2020 MLS Cup where everybody written off the Columbus Crew, and I was kind of one of the few ones that didn't write off the Columbus Crew, and that I just had a feeling that this is why you of course play the game. And guess what happened? This is why you play the game, and that Columbus would end up upsetting the Seattle Sounders in that MLS Cup. So we'll see whether or not if NYCFC can do it again. I think it's going to be relatively tough to do so. I'll say it. And that the other thing that maybe will be a disadvantage for NYCFC coming into that MLS Cup is that no road team has won an MLS Cup ever since 2016, when the Seattle Sounders did against TFC. So, and if you even want to go all the way back, the other team that of course won on the road, well, actually you don't have to go too far back, because even in the prior year when Seattle of course won MLS Cup against TFC in that infamous MLS Cup where Seattle didn't register a single shot on goal and able to win MLS Cup, the Timbers of course winning MLS Cup against Columbus on the road. So it's still possible, but just saying that the history is not really kind to road team in MLS Cup. But like I said, this is why you play the game. Anything can happen. History usually you shouldn't always just look at the history as a way to determine who of course will win this big game. But like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about that in the preview, and in some way I'll probably maybe repeat some of the things that I said in these past 2 videos looking at these 2 teams reaching to MLS Cup. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.